Ministerio TIC.
Mis queridos amigos y amigas, un cordial saludo desde esta esquina de la nación. Mi nombre es Alejandro Marín, su voz confiable en la música, y este es el podcast por Canal 13. Hoy, mi invitado muy especial es un hombre que saltó a la fama en el año 2013 con una canción llamada Take Me to Church, que tiene más de 1.000 millones de reproducciones en Spotify y que hace parte de un conjunto pequeño pero contundente de canciones que definen el nuevo catálogo de la música irlandesa. Hozier está hoy en el programa luego de haber estado en Bogotá en el Movistar Arena presentándose delante de casi 5.000 fanáticos y fanáticas que hicieron de una noche de música una noche bastante especial. Pero hablando de especial, ¿por qué es especial tener a Hozier? Yo creo que una de las cosas más importantes por las cuales vale la pena hacer esta introducción a este cantante tiene que ver con que, al igual que en Colombia, en Irlanda hubo un conflicto armado muy sangriento y muy difícil de solucionar, y gran parte de los acuerdos y conversaciones de paz que se han tenido en nuestro país son un reflejo de las conversaciones y de los diálogos de paz que tuvieron los diferentes grupos armados con el gobierno en Irlanda. Además de una poderosísima división de carácter religioso, pues Hozier entiende muy bien lo que es vivir en guerra. Así es que esta conversación tiene como objeto no solamente hablar de toda la música que lo ha hecho famoso, tanto en 2013 con Take Me to Church, sino también recientemente con canciones tan grandes como Too Sweet o canciones como Nobody's Soldier, sino también hablar un poco de lo que ha sido para él como irlandés vivir en una tierra de paz luego de siglos de guerra. Así que la charla va a ser muy interesante y muy chévere con un tipo que es además gigantesco, es enorme. Hozier mide como 2,15 metros y fue bastante interesante oírlo hablar no solamente de conflicto en Irlanda, sino también de sus observaciones sobre el conflicto israelo-palestino, sobre su inspiración y su conexión con la iglesia para hacer canciones, y una cosa de la que se habla poco pero que es muy interesante, y es su fanatismo o su pasión por las abejas, porque es un apicultor profesional. Así que prepárense porque hoy va a estar muy bueno el podcast aquí en Canal 13. Welcome to Bogotá once again.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back.
Such a great pleasure to have you again in our city. You know you make a big impact every time you come.
It's a joy for me. I gotta say, it's a big impact on me.
How many times have you come to Bogotá?
This is the second time.
This is the second time, yes. And it feels like the 10th.
Yeah,
you know, it's like, because when you were at the picnic, at the Stereo Picnic, it was such a monumental performance that we still remember it to this day.
That's cool. That's fun. It was. I mean, it was a special show for me to play here for the very first time.
Did you feel that way too? I mean, did you feel the love of the crowd? How it was?
I think so. Anytime you're in a place for the first time, it's kind of feels special, you know. But the crowd were amazing. You know, that was such a sweet welcome.
Is a Colombian musician that was with you at that show still with you?
Oh no, Joy. No, she's. I believe she might be touring with Sabrina Carpenter this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, she's.
So she was just
musician.
like a live part of your band?
Yes, exactly. So I like write and record a lot of the music. You know, like all of the music myself, and then when we go live, you know, musicians sometimes come in and out, but yeah. So there's a live band, some of which I've played on the records, you know, over the years, but generally I write and arrange and produce something.
Right. Let's talk about the latest album and the two versions. I'd like you to take me through them because I was, you know, browsing through the first iteration of it.
Yeah.
And it tends to go more on the folky side, and then it becomes 3 albums, 3 records at the same time. Can you explain?
Yeah, with Unreal on Earth, there's kind of
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There's like a few. I think there's a lot of colors. There's a lot of kind of tones on that record, and there was some music released just before the album was dropped, and there's been music that's been released afterwards, and then so. Trying to get everything all in one place, we just released like Unreal on Earth Unending, which kind of has everything in there. So what I tried to do was arrange the album into 9 sort of circles, because it was referencing Dante's Inferno, and he pictures hell as these 9 circles. And so the themes of the songs all take place in those 9 themes.
Cool.
If that makes sense.
Why were you into Dante?
I just had a lot of time. I had a lot of time on my hands at the start. I had a lot of time on my hands, like anybody in 2025 who probably gets into Dante's Inferno. In like COVID, during like the
Gotcha.
That period, and I was reading a lot of epic poetry, and so. I was always drawn to like old poetry, epic poetry, stuff that was like Ovid. There was a Roman poet, Dante is Italian, in the kind of early Renaissance period. And I just felt like there was a lot of work that I wanted to sit in, like lyrics and storytelling, and just and that's a story of somebody walking through unknown circumstances, entering into this dark place, and the only way through it is to the other side. And I think. In that COVID period, it was a lot of unknowns. It was this new thing, and there was elements of that story that was resonating with me personally at the time. And I think being able to arrange an album in those 9 themes, every circle is like lust and wrath, and there's like greed, etc., treachery. So to write songs to those themes, it was like a fun challenge and a fun thing to explore.
When it comes to poetry, how influential is Irish poetry and literature in what you do?
Very much so. I kind of hold like a lot of Irish poets as kind of like North Stars, but I feel like poetry is a thing away from lyrics. Like there's,
I know.
It's something.
It's very different.
Very different,
Right.
It's a totally different medium, and
But does it influence how you write? I mean, like, do you try to get those 2 worlds together at some point?
I think it does. It even just has made me think deeper about a choice of words, and like what is invoked in a word. Like you can give an example. I kind of came across. You could say something like a tree stands over you or looms over you, and something is in the body reacts differently to words that could mean the same thing. Sound and feel different in the mouth and feel different in the body, and that to me, even that alone is like such a worthwhile thing about poetry to explore and find how it's affecting you.
If you had to pick a favorite writer or literature or poetry writer, could you pick one from Ireland?
I could absolutely. Like Seamus Heaney is a kind of a diamond North Star to me, and his work. I would have studied it in secondary school and like high school, but it wasn't until I was sort of traveling out of Ireland and started reading more of his works and listening to more of his works that I resonated with it, and it just as a child, my kind of childhood, growing up kind of on the edge of the countryside and kind of exploring kind of rural landscapes a little bit. A lot of his early work, is reflecting on that. So Seamus Heaney, and like I've said it before, James Joyce opened a lot of windows for me. He's Portrait of the Artist as a young man, and it's about an artist trying to find himself. So yeah, like they're kind of, I think to me they're a little bit sacred, and they're kind of up in the in a sort of an elevated space, but they represent a kind of standard of or a not even an ambition, but just a standard of what you can put into words, what can be communicated. Yeah,
and it definitely sounds like it when you listen to your big songs. It feels like you really want to get to that point. I mean, like I've been playing Take Me to Church for a good part of a decade or so, and I got a couple of things to say about that song and about Nobody's Soldier and about Too Sweet. And it's the fact that not only do you have this feeling of epic poetry going out through the airwaves, but also as I was reading some of the stuff that's being written about those songs over the course of 10 years, I was looking at how people consider it a radio smash or a radio hit, you know. And it's funny because radio seems to be so dated, so
true.
old, so it does. Yeah. But in this particular case, like with great radio songs and great poems, it feels as though your music reaches timelessness. You know, do you aspire? Did you aspire to do that when you got those songs off the ground?
I don't think I was even thinking about that with something like Take Me to Church. I was like, I was trying to approach it in a broad way. Like there's also me writing as an Irishman about the legacy of the institutionalized Catholic Church at home, the way its institutions had its legacy on the people, you know. So there was just me as a young Irishman who was trying to process that, and you know, and my dissatisfaction with that.
Did you grow up being a Catholic?
I'm from a Catholic family, but I was raised like my parents were Catholic, but I was raised in a kind of Quaker tradition, so they kind of converted. Okay. But I'd be culturally Catholic, and I would have been, I suppose, baptized into Catholicism, but then raised. Don't think I never confirmed, never communed, but I was kind of steered into kind of Quakerism, which there's not a lot of Quakers in Ireland, but it's a very there's no clergy in Quakerism, which is interesting. It's kind of there is no priest, there's no middleman between you, and there's no toll keeper.
So how does it work? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know Quakerism did not have priests and stuff.
Yeah, no, I don't tell on myself here. I haven't been to a Quaker meeting house for a long time since I was a child. But people just sit in silent kind of meditation or reflection. You know what I mean? And traditionally, if one person felt moved to speak about something, anybody could stand up and say, hey, you know what? I do remember I was a kid when I was there, but like if something was in the news that they felt that they had reflected upon or resonated with their faith or they had some response to, I remember seeing, you know, members of that community, they might stand up and say, hey, we all saw this in the news and it reminded me of this, or I was comforted by this, or something like that. So what's cool is there's no toll keeper, you know what I mean? There's no, which is nice, you know, so that was, but I come from a Catholic background, yeah.
When you say you grew up in rural Ireland, I'd like you to take me there. How rural is it for real? Like,
it was kind of on the edge. Right now, it's suburban sprawl has sort of caught up with it in the last 20 years, I'd say.
Like everywhere, you know, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like the countryside tends to become the suburbia.
The next, suburban frontier, you know. When I first moved out there as a child, there wasn't many young kids my age. There was certainly in the surrounding fields, and then as I was a teenager, it was like, you know, take a bus to the nearest town where my friends were. So as a kid, I certainly felt very isolated. Not sure if I made sense of it, but like hay bales and like streams and like there's a lot of livestock, a lot of animals. There was kind of, you know, you would do the sort of the seasonal things, like there'd be baby potatoes left in the field that you'd kind of go out and do outdoor chores like that. You might go blackberry picking, all that, those wholesome little childhood stuff, like, which was it's taken me to be 35 to say, okay, like to live an offline existence at that point was really, really cool. You know, it was nice to have that experience, you know, but yeah, no, suburban sprawl has sort of taken over those areas, you know.
How important or how influential has war in Ireland been in what you write?
War?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think I could never speak on it without mentioning that, like, growing up in the Republic of Ireland, I grew up south of Dublin, like County Wicklow, very peaceful, like it's the Garden of Ireland is what they call Wicklow. And anybody really, generally in the Republic, we kind of take for granted a very, very peaceful, sort of tranquil existence in the last few decades. But only 2 hours over the border, the experience of people in Derry and Belfast is very, very different in the, obviously 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. But what we do, there's the adjacency of that violence, but there's also how much, I suppose, colonial violence is still sort of sits in the landscape a little bit, still sits in the kind of generational traumatic experience, I suppose. Like Wicklow Jail is very, very close to me, and we go to on a school trip. You'd be 6 years old, 7 years old, and they're showing you where they hung. Where they hung Catholics. I don't, there's also the colonial legacy. There's like kind of the forced starvation, etc. And there's the colonial legacy. There's the revolutions like 1798, etc. But I think it's if you're historically minded or historically literate, it definitely informs the way I view the modern world. You know what I mean? It seems like Ireland was a sort of an early testing ground for a lot of like colonial enterprises, shall we say. It was...
Yeah, and you know what? Another thing, I'm asking you this because Colombia has been going through a very similar conflict that you guys lived. And I've spoken to several Irishmen who have been a key part in the peace process and the peace talks that have taken place in this country over the course of 50 years.
Right.
And many of them, but this was back before the first peace process was signed with the Revolutionary Forces of Colombia here back in 2015, seem so hopeful and so positive and so optimistic about the possibility of reaching peace because we've never been at peace. And Irishmen, such as yourself, have always approached us and said, it's possible. It can be done. We live in a peaceful Ireland, and so can you live in a peaceful Colombia.
Yeah, I would totally. I mean, I'm kind of moved to hear that, and I'm always comforted by and quite amazed by Ireland's sort of peace process with the Good Friday Agreement, sometimes referred to as the Belfast Agreement. And Irish people got really, really upset when British politicians around Brexit would sort of shrug it off like it wasn't a terribly important piece of legislation. But what it guaranteed was something remarkable. It was that people, regardless of, in two separate jurisdictions and countries, regardless of their language, their history, and how they identified, their citizenship could be recognised in the same territory. So somebody who comes from a British or Unionist background in Northern Ireland is as entitled to the rights of Irish citizenship as somebody who comes from an Irish background there. Somebody from an Irish nationalist background in that area is entitled to UK citizenship, etc. So it's sort of parity of esteem is the language that was used. So like an equal measure of respect to both and everybody in that situation. It's a really, I don't know if there's many peace processes like it in the world, but it's a very successful one. Yeah, it's
I absolutely think is one of, I think that the peace process in Ireland and the one in South Africa, the one where Mandela took the major role as the leader of the whole conversation to end apartheid, are the two biggest examples of reaching a real agreement in spite of all the bloodshed and stuff. You know,
remarkable achievement.
I know,
and I think in a time like this, like not to go down, but when we're witnessing the kind of violence, the kind of in the last 16 months. To see something like that, it could inspire hope.
I know it can be discouraging though to see that.
Yeah.
Let's change the subject and talk about bees.
Okay, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Let's move on from our political talk and talk about bees. When did you start getting into bees?
Honestly, it wasn't necessarily by choice. I was gifted a beehive by my parents one Christmas, I think, or was it one birthday?
Are you serious? They gave you a beehive for Christmas?
A beautiful cedar beehive, and I sort of was like, I felt it was like like somebody's giving you a puppy or a goldfish, then I was like, I travel a lot. Like, I don't know if I can do this, and I don't know how to keep.
How old were you when they did this?
I was in my 30s. Like, I was like 30. So it was a beautiful gift. I didn't even know how much I would love it. At the time I was like, this is cool, but I have no idea how to keep bees. And my neighbor, who's a dear friend, old family friend, Quincy Fanley, he had been keeping bees for a few years, and he gifted me also, I think it was my birthday, a bee suit and a thing that we call a nuke, which is what you populate a hive with. It's a queen and a colony of that queen's bees.
Okay.
And I just watched him do it for the next few months over the course of like lockdown, and really enjoyed it. And it just became a hobby and something I found really rewarding. And it's a kind of meditative thing. You kind of super, Zen sort of practice, and I enjoyed it, and I keep it up as much as I can. Yeah.
Is it true that they're going extinct?
Yeah.
How true is that?
To the best of my knowledge, I mean, from speaking to other local beekeepers, how much less insects they've remarked upon, and farmers have remarked upon locally, and bees are included in that. And so part of that is obviously like geomodded seeds and pesticides. So like we're now in a kind of an ecosystem of using genetically modified crops that are modified to survive certain very, very hardcore pesticides, etc. So I think there is a risk to it. I think what's cool is that people also, have access to keeping bees. There is, and I think Europe, I can't speak for anywhere else in the world. I know that there has been some policy changes in the EU to sort of try and encourage bee growth, because I believe there was a drop in bee population. And the projected science on that is pretty bad. That if we lost pollinators like bees, you're talking about 50 years until all vegetative life or like vegetation pretty much dies.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's
it's stupid, yeah.
And scary.
Yeah, it's spooky, yeah.
It can be, a bit dystopic. Well, listen, it's been great talking to you, meeting you. You got a new song out?
Yeah.
You just came out on
a
Friday?
few months ago. We released. It's a kind of a remix with a nature conservation program.
Okay.
Where a few artists have done this. David Bowie's estate have done this, where they literally put in nature sounds, like remix with like, and these are sounds from Wicklow, where I'm from, where I keep the bees. But it's in tandem with the United Nations, I think the Museum for the United Nations, and they literally can credit like nature itself as an artist on published works, and so 50% of the royalties go to nature conservatories or nature what's the word I'm looking for? But nature sites like parks, reserves, nature reserves, etc. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we released last week.
Once again, thank you very much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great show tonight.
Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.
Wonderful
Really
to have you in Bogota.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Ministerio TIC,